What's good, y'all? This is the House of Motivation. My name is Sean Slaughter. And on today's interview, we have Virginia's own, Virginia Beach's own, Virginia Beach, the daughter of Virginia Beach. We have Jordan Sheard. What's good, Jordan?
What's going on, Sean? Super glad to be here doing this interview with you.
No doubt. Glad you can be with us. And tell us, who do you work for and what do you do?
So I am a settlement agent with Clear Title, Escrow, and Settlements. I am basically head of operations right now of the Hampton Roads area here in Virginia, and am working on developing the business here and working on some title stuff here in the real estate industry.
Okay, dope. So you said you're a settlement agent. Is title agent wrong to say that?
No, I would say that the titles are pretty interchangeable. Settlement agent, title agent. Sometimes you might even hear escrow agent or escrow officer, title officer. It kind of really just depends on what the particular person likes to be called.
Okay. So title, we've used three words. All right.
Yeah.
We've used title, we've used settlement, and we used escrow. All right. Is there a difference? And if there is a difference, can you explain the difference between maybe doing title work, settlement, and escrow work?
Yes. So yes, there is a difference in the three. Typically, any title or settlement company will kind of encompass those three areas. So title, escrow, and settlement. But to generally explain the difference, title specifically refers to generally real estate title. So titles to residential properties, whether it be, or sometimes even commercial properties, because of course, commercial properties still have titles as well. So any title, usually title has to do with specifically any piece of property or real estate. Settlement is basically like sometimes stuff you could even hear in any general legal process. So it's just in regards to kind of settling some sort of agreement or understanding. Really, settlement is, at least in the real estate process, both parties coming to an agreement in a transaction, whether it's buying and selling, or even refinancing, whatever parties are involved, coming to an agreement to essentially settle a transaction.
And I like that because typically in the real estate, as a real estate agent, for our clients, we call that the closing day, right? The day it closes. But just like you said, what's really happening is these two parties are settling the transaction. It's coming to a head. It's going to close out. And so, okay, that makes a lot of sense.
Absolutely. So, yeah, that's settlement. And then escrow is really in regards to almost how those two come together, title and settlement. Because escrow typically involves any sorts of funds or monies that are involved in that process. So I know we might discuss some of these phrases here throughout this conversation, but things like EMD, or your earnest money deposit, or any sort of other money or funds in regards to any agreements that are made throughout the settlement process. Typically, any title or settlement company will have the ability to escrow said funds to make sure that they're being allocated appropriately throughout the process.
Got you. And escrow, they're pretty much they're holding the funds. They're kind of a third party to kind of negotiate, to referee where those funds are going, right? In a sense. Absolutely.
A neutral party to ensure that the agreements are essentially being upheld and there's no quote unquote funny business going on.
Okay, cool. Yep. So we're talking about title, doing title work, and deed. Title and deed are the same thing, or are they just different things?
For the state of Virginia, yes, they're the same thing. Your title is essentially piece of paper, basically, that determines who is the recorded owner of any piece of real estate or property. But yes, title and deed are definitely interchangeable words there. They basically do the same thing.
Gotcha. And what's so interesting about deeds is that especially in America, you can really track American history. You can track time periods. You can track things that have been happening throughout this country in decades in deeds.
Yes.
Just based on the different things that were put in the deeds, whether it was certain people couldn't live in certain areas, all these different types of things you can literally track in deeds. And so when you're doing deed work and, maybe it's not new construction, maybe it's for a house that's, let's just say the house is in Hampton, right? And it's in the 1920s. And when you're starting to do your work for title, are you having to go back and track kind of that title work going all the way back to make sure that title is clear? And what does clear title mean anyway? Yeah.
Right. So, and just to kind of go back a little bit, because you made me think of something, title kind of encompasses all deeds. So there are different types of deeds.
Sure.
But title is kind of the general word that encompasses all of those different types of deeds. We do have to go back. We don't necessarily have to go all the way back, but generally, especially when we're doing, say, a purchase, somebody wants to buy a property. We will generally go back somewhere between 40 and 60 years in the title work. And just based off of those findings, we'll be able to determine whether title is clear. Maybe if there are any other parties that might not have been involved into the transaction or process thus far that might need to be, whether it means signing off on, usually it means just signing off on some documentation. So that's the time frame for title work that we usually look for. What determines the title being clear is there being no liens or encumbrances on the title work. Usually when someone has a mortgage on a piece of real estate, that is usually the first lien. Of course, people can have second mortgages, third mortgages, etc. But typically for most just regular home buyers or property buyers, real estate buyers, whatever title you want to put to it, they generally only have one mortgage or loan. And whatever that loan is usually in the first lien position, meaning that loan has first priority to be paid off should the property get sold, especially.
Sure.
So, like I said, determining whether title is clear is making sure there are no liens or encumbrances. Usually people only have a mortgage lien, but sometimes there can be tax liens. There can be credit liens. I've heard of someone having a lien from Target because they've opened a Target credit account.
Really?
And for whatever reason, exactly. May not have paid it off completely or gotten behind on their payoff process, and Target actually went and filed a lien to put on that property. Yep. So that in that case, when someone having a lien that basically just means that for that particular owner, if they want to sell or refinance in the future, whenever that time comes, that means that they're going to have to pay off that lien before they're going to be able to continue on with the process of whether they're selling or refinancing.
And can they typically choose to pay that lien out of their proceeds if they have any?
Especially in the selling and refinancing, actually. It kind of just depends on, of course, all the ins and outs of that particular transaction. But yes, absolutely. If there are proceeds, they can take that out of whatever they may have coming to them from that sale, or even refinance, especially if it's like a cash out refinance.
So you've talked about issues where, somebody wants to sell their house and there's a lien on it. Maybe they haven't paid for a roof. They haven't paid for that Target credit card. They've had, mechanical liens is what they're called for the contractor work and stuff like that. Can you talk a little bit about issues when the deed has not been passed down correctly? And this comes up a lot, specifically with families, marriages, people not having wills. What are some of the issues that you've seen that people face when they don't have a clear will, or they just got married like a month ago and passed away, or they kind of get got a side chick but they didn't really or the kids? Like, what are some of the common issues that you find when it comes to passing down that house?
So one thing that I like to say whenever I explain the title process in general to people is that it can be really simple, but it can also get really complicated. And where that complication can generally come in is especially when you have, let's say, a seller. Whoever that person may be and whatever entitlement they have to that property, they may be deeded as said owner of that property. And say they go to try to sell it, but come to find out they inherited that property from their grandfather, grandmother, father, whoever, someone in their direct family line. But because of the, let's say, lack of paperwork, especially paperwork that has been recorded typically with whatever city or county that property is in, we can generally run across some complications. So to kind of speak to a situation that I was in here recently, that we unfortunately weren't able to close just given the specific circumstances. But we had a seller who, of course, wanted to sell his property. And, we went through our general process, did our title work. When we got our title work back, we found out that there were a couple of additional people who were going to also have to sign off on the documentation and kind of be involved in the process. And that was because the person who was trying to sell this property, again, was deeded as the owner, but because this property was passed down and because there were no, it was passed down from deceased family members, and because there were no formally recorded wills or documentation of that nature to specifically and explicitly say that Joe Smith supposed to be the only person handling any sort of negotiations or dealings with this property. We had to bring in these other two people who are essentially considered heirs to those deceased family members who passed down their property. And when you don't have any wills or other documentation, there is, at least as far as the state of Virginia goes, really no way to get around an heir. They're going to have to be involved one way or another. Of course, just like with anything, there's always a loophole. So there is a way to kind of still go through with the sale of a property like that without involving the heirs, but it does involve some risk. And it does limit the types of people that you'd be able to usually sell your property to. So,
and isn't that risk the buyer, the future buyer that's going to buy that property is taking on that risk, right?
Correct.
Because
so basically,
go ahead. Yeah.
What in that particular situation, what that meant was that one, those two additional individuals were also going to, like I said, have to be involved and sign off all the documentation. If they were to not, that seller would still be able to sell the property. But if the other two parties weren't going to be involved, then that meant that he was most likely not going to be able to find any title company or title insurance underwriters that were going to be willing to issue a title policy. Because of that, that meant that no lender was going to get involved, because if a lender can't protect essentially what is their asset, they're not going to loan out the money. And then two, that whoever was going to purchase the property was going to have to most likely buy it with cash. And of course, they were going to have to be made aware of the fact that there was not going to be a title policy issued, and again, be willing to take on that risk. And like you said, that risk would go to whoever was going to purchase that property.
So I want to talk about the title policy. I had a buyer in Norfolk, and this was a weird transaction. They bought new construction back in 2006. They called me to sell their house. They were the only owner. We ran title, and come to find out, because what is it? It's owner's. Is it owner's title?
Correct.
The initial policy.
Correct.
Right. And so the construction company basically did not convey the title properly. And so when we went to sell the house, I want to say the portion under their living room was still owned by somebody else.
Ooh.
Yes. Now, here's what's crazy. So I talked to them about it. They bought the house in 06. And I want to say in 2010 or 11, an issue, I don't know how the issue popped up, but they eventually found that a piece of their property was owned by somebody else and they had to pay them, right? In order to get that property deeded to them. And they had to pay them, it was like 30 grand. And that person could have charged anything, right? Person could have said, give me $1 million for that little square piece of property.
Yes.
And so because this property wasn't owned by them, we basically had to, call the owner's policy.
Yeah.
And say, hey, look, this thing wasn't deeded correctly. And thankfully, eventually we got it all squared away, where the owner's policy said, look, we can't find this person, because they went all the way back. And they said, we can't find this person. But just in case this person does show up, we will guarantee that the next buyer that will take care of this issue. This issue will be settled.
Nice.
And so as far as just having that title policy, there are some buyers that get to the table and don't want a title policy because they don't want to spend the extra money, which is
correct.
So foolish. Why is that title policy so important, Jordan?
Because unlike most other insurance policies, what makes title insurance different is that instead of protecting you from the day that policy is issued to whatever date in the future, what it actually does is protects you from the day you settle on said property, going back into the past. So that means if you purchase a property and, you went through the process, everything looked like it was all fine and dandy. You bought your house, you've been in it for 6 months, a year, 10 years, and somebody comes in along saying that, hey, my grandfather owned this property 100 years ago. I'm supposed to have an interest in this piece of land. What that title policy can essentially do is protect you from having to do something like pay out a large sum of money to whatever person could be claiming interest into your property for whatever reason. So yes, it definitely is. It's a way to protect your asset, essentially. And what I like to always point out to people is because most people do usually use loans or mortgages to purchase real estate. Yeah. So like I said, what I like to point out is if the lender is willing to take out a policy to protect the asset and that they're loaning that money for you to purchase that, why would you not do the same for that actually, especially if it's a place where you're dwelling, you're living, your family stays there, it's essentially where you, somewhere you stay to keep a roof over your head. Why would you not want to protect that and do everything in your ability to ensure that whatever happens, that everything should be taken care of? Facts.
Don't get rid of that title policy, y'all. Don't get rid of it.
Do it. Don't do it.
Don't do it. So I'm helping somebody buy a house, and I asked them a couple of questions. Hey, do you have a loan? Excuse me, are you buying the house with a loan? Yes. Right. Do you have a lender? Sometimes that's 50-50. Some people say, yeah, I'll use a lender my mom and dad use, so on and so forth. We're doing a home inspection. Hey, we need to do a home inspection. Do you guys already have a home inspection company that you use? That's a little less rare. Most people will just say, hey, Sean, I'll go with whatever company you recommend. When it comes to title, 99.99999% of the time, when I ask somebody, hey, you have a choice of title company, do you have a title company of your choice? My clients, have no idea what I'm talking about. I want to say 70% of the time, and that's being generous. Right. And they don't have a title company in mind. Most of them don't even know what title does. Many of them think that they're going to close at the mortgage company and don't even realize that, hey, the title company is the one that's, refereeing this whole transaction. So how come regular folks don't know about title companies or settlement companies and what they do?
I think there's so many answers to that question, honestly, but the biggest or the main one that comes to mind is just a general lack of knowledge. Most of the time, a title company is not going to come into play unless there's being some sort of real estate transaction happening there. Especially, and it doesn't even have to be a loan involved. It could be somebody selling a property. Somebody could be buying cash. But like I said, unless you're purchasing a piece of real estate, selling a piece of real estate, refinancing a property, generally, title companies those are the only areas you typically see them really working. And even they're usually like one of the men behind the curtain, so to speak. A lot of what title does is behind the scenes.
Yeah.
I wish that more people knew about what title does and the fact that they are able to essentially choose their company, especially here in Virginia. You really do have an ability to kind of curate your own team, especially being in like a buying situation. You really can pick and pull whoever you desire to be part of your transaction. But like I was saying, I think it's just a general lack of knowledge and the fact that title work is kind of so niche down into real estate that if you're not involved or you don't have any direct knowledge to it, you generally don't really know anything about it. And even still today, I come across even some agents who are like, I still don't fully understand what title does. Which, and that just can speak to a lot of things. But if you also don't have knowledgeable experts at the closing table, especially if you are an agent who is very involved in your transactions, who goes to your closings and things of that nature, if you don't have a knowledgeable agent who is at that settlement and who is, helping walk your clients through that process, then you generally don't even really have the ability to even be an ear to some parts of the process or just, like I said, general knowledge of the purpose of title.
Yeah. So it's interesting, and I agree with that. I think, it is kind of behind the scenes. It is kind of the man behind the curtain. It's usually a kind of I guess as a title agent, a settlement agent, you're doing a lot of business to business connections.
Correct.
Working with people like me who's a real estate agent, working with lenders and those that are part of the transaction. Mm-hmm. But the reality is people are paying for this, right? So they don't know about it, but they're paying for it. How can somebody shop for title? How can a regular customer, they're going to watch this interview and they're going to say, and of course, this channel is training real estate agents. And so some real estate agents are going to be enlightened, concerning this interview. But you may have some consumers that watch this interview and say, you know what, I want to buy a house, but I want to shop for title. I want to know a little bit more about what companies are in my area. How can they go about doing that? Do titles have their prices on websites? What steps should they take? So
Google is your best friend for almost all things these days, or just the internet in general. Do a search of the title companies that are local to your area. Some title companies do have their prices advertised on their website. Some do not. And it's just a matter of whether you're willing to shop with companies who specifically have their prices advertised, or sometimes they even have forms on their website where you can fill out specific information or details in regards to maybe something you're looking to buy, whether you're under contract already or not. But just, some general numbers of things like loan price, purchase price that can kind of help break everything down and give you a general estimate of what your costs look like in regards to title, as well as your lender's title policy. If you decide to get a owner's title policy, it can give you an estimate for that. And sometimes we'll even include estimates for like prepaid taxes and things of that nature. But again, if they don't have their prices advertised, you can usually just give a call or sometimes even send an email. What a lot of companies will do is they can provide you with the prices for their services, and just speak verbally to you some numbers, or they can also give you what is called a preliminary CD and just kind of line out the specific related titles, items, and charges on that CD to show you what it will cost for the services. Again, the lender title policy, the owner's title policy, and like I said, sometimes even those prepaid taxes, and even.
Nice. So, we're coming to the close here. Prior to being a settlement agent, you were doing notary.
Correct.
Right? And that's how you got into it. And, being in this real estate business, there are so many different aspects of the real estate business that I don't see people of color in. Right. And, one of my jobs, one of my motivations, one of my inspirations is that as I'm going to talk to schools and things like that, real estate agent is probably one of the more splashy things that I think, I'll talk to kids about and give them more information about. And, but even then, I think I saw a stat that said, I think it said like between 6 to 7% of real estate agents are Black folks. And I think less than 1% of that were Black men, which was interesting.
Yeah, that is interesting.
And that is and real estate is kind of the one that kind of stands out the most. Why is being a title agent, for somebody that's out there and they say, I want to get into the real estate business and I don't want to be maybe a real estate agent, but I want to know about some other careers. Why do you enjoy being a title agent? And why is it a good career choice?
Me personally, at least as far as my company goes, I get to do a lot of networking. So that's meeting with agents like you, Sean, and just getting to know them, making connections, and essentially building relationships with these people to get business from them. And in my personal opinion, that's the best way to build business, is to essentially build relationships. Because of course, you're always going to have your brands or names that kind of stick out the most, especially given your specific area. But when you be out here and essentially make a name and face for yourself and for your company, whether you're well known in the area or not, making those connections is really vital to being part of this business. Whether you're a title agent, you're a loan officer, you're an insurance agent, or a real estate agent, you really do have to put the footwork in and do that networking. But like I said, the reason I enjoy it the most is just making those connections with people, getting to know people, and essentially helping these individuals in this industry do good and even better business. Title is something that is such a necessary and vital part of real estate in general. So there's always going to be a need and demand for it in regards to just the real estate market. Of course, our business does fluctuate with the real estate market. Whether it's up, when it's up, we're up. When it's down, we can be down, but we don't always have to be. But generally, like I said, we do move with the market. But anyone who is wanting to be part of this industry, but like you said, not necessarily being an agent, I personally, like I said, like the necessity of title, and just, like I said, making those connections with people and helping do good business out here in the area.
Okay. So somebody says, all right, Jordan, I'm hearing you talk. I like everything you're saying. But I have a family, whatever that looks like. How does that work schedule look like? How can that work with my family, with however my family is configured? What is that work day going to look like? What is the time commitment going to look like?
So usually hours can fluctuate. There are some days where I may not start my day until 11, 12 o'clock because I have so many after hour things to do. Like I said before, you being in, especially in this part of the industry, you really do have to be willing to put in the footwork, do the networking, attend the events, go to the lunch and learns, do the follow-ups and do those coffee meetings and those lunch meetings. But you also do have to have the flexibility to say, hey, I can do most of my general work from maybe say 9 to 3, 9 to 4, but I've got a networking happy hour to hit at 5:30, and I know there's going to be a bunch of agents and loan officers there. I need to go out there and network and make sure they know who I am. So I think it really just depends on your personal dynamic, family dynamic even, and just you being able to have that flexibility and also being willing to sometimes do some before hour work and after hour work.
And you have even some additional flexibility because you are a mobile title company. And so how is that different than maybe a title company that does not do mobile title?
So we actually offer our mobile and after hour services at no additional charge or cost to all of our clients. And we are very open and forward about offering that, especially given the area that we're in. This is a highly populated military area. And a lot of times, especially when you're dealing with clients who are involved in the military, they can't get off between 9 and 5 to make it to your office to get closing done. So that kind of lends our ability to our clients to say, hey, if this means that we have to close on Friday at 7 o'clock or even on a Sunday at 11 o'clock in the morning, we're willing to do whatever it takes to make sure we get to closing. So, and that also is something that makes us a little different because title companies do generally offer it. It is not always free of charge, and they're typically not forward about saying, hey, if we need to close on off hours, whether it's during the week or on the weekend, we're willing to do that.
Okay. And last question, just personality wise, do you have to be a people person? Do you have are you naturally an extrovert? Are you naturally a people person? Do you have to have those traits in order to be title? Can I be kind of quiet and introverted and be somebody that can be successful in title?
I would say it would definitely help to be a people person and even to be slightly extroverted. I considered myself an introvert for a while there, but I'm coming to find that I'm more so an introverted extrovert. So
or maybe what we call a functional extrovert.
There you go. Exactly.
Where you're introverted, but you can pull the extroversion out functionally when you need it, and then you go, and then after you done talk to everybody, you go back home and just
correct.
Get your energy back.
Yes, because I definitely do have a cat. But no, it does help. It does help. But because like I said, it really built, especially for something like what I do is more so on the business development side and not just doing behind the scenes work and processing transactions and closing them. I actually have to actively go out here and scout for business. So if you don't have those qualities, or if it's not really something you're willing to do, I wouldn't say that I wouldn't really recommend it, but I would definitely say to kind of sit with yourself and ask yourself, is that something I'm willing to do? Is that something I'm willing to learn? Is that something I'm willing to give my energy and time to? Because it is going to take some sort of effort to put yourself out here, get in front of people, sometimes even be uncomfortable. I've been in situations definitely where I've been the only person in the room that I know and I have to go talk to people who I have no idea who they are. They have no idea who I am. And, spark a conversation to see if I can move forward in building a relationship and getting business from them. So those qualities definitely help. I wouldn't say that they're necessary, but I would say that it should be something that you're willing to either learn or put the energy and effort into.
No doubt. Well, I definitely appreciate you joining us today and kind of giving us some information, schooling us on what a settlement company does. If there are real estate agents that say, hey, I really like Jordan, I love her knowledge, I like how personable she is, and I want to get in touch with her, to use her on some of my transactions, or customers that say, hey, I want to talk to Jordan about doing some title work for my home. What is the best, contact information place they can contact you at?
Absolutely. So I'll actually put my work cell number up here. So 757-298-1662 is a good way to get in contact with me, whether it's call or text. My email is Jordan, Jordan, at cleartitleescrow.com. You can also find me on Instagram at Be Clear with Jordan. And then too, just throw our website out there for anybody who just wants to look more into our company and just kind of, take a look at what we have out on the internet, cleartitleescrow.com. You can find out more about what we do, what our mottos are, and just how we really look to serve our clients and our referral partners.
Cool. Jordan, I appreciate you. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me, Sean. I appreciate it.
No problem. And this is the House of Motivation, the place where inspiration lives.